Which Flame gets the biggest opportunity if Connor Zary is out long term? We take a look at the goaltenders as well as a look back at Al MacNeil's 40 plus years in Calgary. Hey everyone, welcome into Hot Topics. This episode brought to you by ProStar's Plumbing and Heating, Calgary's first choice when it comes to plumbing and heating. Rob Wong joined alongside by Postmedia Calgary Flames writers Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin. And guys, a bittersweet victory by the Flames in Anaheim as they pick up the 2 points, but lose Connor Zary to injury after a knee-on-knee hit by Anaheim's Drew Hellison. Wes, it's a big blow for a guy that has become a key piece for this team. Without him in the lineup, who has to step up?
Yeah, and just sort of to start with, we don't know what the status of Connor Zary is. We know he's being evaluated further. Obviously, the replays didn't look good, but let's, I guess, just put on the table for starters that we don't know what we're looking at here in terms of severity of injury. If the Flames are going to be without Connor Zary, there's sort of two names that jump out to me in terms of being the most impacted. The first would be Yegor Sharangovich. He's an option to play center. We've seen it before. I thought he did in Anaheim quite well, actually, after being shifted to the middle when Connor Zary was hurt. Although I think it's been acknowledged here and other places plenty that Yegor Sharangovich, because of the way he shoots the puck, is probably most impactful on the wing, which brings us to option number two, which is Rory Cairns, a 22-year-old who's lighting up the American Hockey League. Really interesting story, a guy who didn't even get a look in a preseason game, a guy who was considered to be way down the radar of Flames prospects, and he's absolutely sort of popped this season as the first-line center for the Calgary Wranglers, currently leads the AHL in goals, second in points. And I think, if Connor Zary is going to miss some time, this seems like an ideal opportunity to get a look at Rory Cairns, who is certainly your number one center prospect. He's claimed that spot with no doubt so far this season.
Yeah, and I think it should be said that this would be a pretty worst-case scenario situation for these Flames. They don't have depth at center. They don't have depth, to be honest, in terms of like offensive creation. And Zary's a guy who's been very good at both. They lost Cole Schwent at the end of training camp on waivers. And Justin Kirkland went down to a season-ending knee injury. So Roy Cairns is a guy who, honestly, I think a lot of us would be excited to see him up, but I also think a lot of us would be totally fine with him spending the full season in the AHL. He wasn't a full season AHLer, so he's definitely a guy who I think most of us think can play and would be excited. I don't think it's a situation where you're get him up now. So if Connor Zary is out long term, there's no silver lining here. There's no positive story about a young guy getting his opportunity because Connor Zary has been so good. He's he dealt with I believe it was a broken ankle when he was in his first year as a pro in the AHL. So he's already had his development stalled a little bit by a pretty major injury. And if this one does the same, that's just a really bad break. So I don't know, Sharangovich, Cairns, but I did just want to emphasize that this will have real, likely measurable impacts on the Calgary Flames this season and hopefully not going forward, but they're losing a really, really, this is not your average second-year player. This guy is one of their top forwards in a position where they don't have depth. It's a big loss, if it's a loss.
Yeah, it really is a tough spot for the Flames to be in. Meanwhile, the goaltending split has been pretty even for the most part this year, Danny, but of late, we've seen Dustin Wolf get the majority of the starts here. Is head coach Ryan Huska potentially done with this goalie split and ready to ride that hot hand?
Yeah, I think he started 2 games in a row. He has started the first of pretty much every back-to-back this season, so it was no surprise. I don't think that they want Dustin Wolf right now starting the second game of back-to-back, so we're recording this on Wednesday morning. I would very strongly suspect that we will see Dan Vladar in net against the Los Angeles Kings, but Ryan Huska artfully, I would say, let us know that this is not going to be a 50-50 split going forward. And I honestly, I feel bad for Dan Vladar because I think Dan Vladar's been very good and has faced far better opposition, has been put in much more difficult situations, in my opinion, throughout the season. Dustin Wolf has just been so good that it's pretty clear that that's the direction they're going to go. Now, what I would expect is that if Dan Vladar is great in a game, if let's say that they're doing a 60-40 split now, I still think that they'll give Dan Vladar a run of games. I think that they have been very fair to both goalies and will continue to do so. So that's sort of my interpretation of where we're at with it.
Yeah, I didn't see Ryan Huska's comments last week as much a commitment to playing Dustin Wolf more as I did a challenge to both goaltenders. And for right now, Dustin Wolf has been the better of the two goalies. They need Dan Vladar to be better. Like, they need better numbers from Dan Vladar sort of everywhere. They need better numbers from Dustin Wolf on the road. His home road splits are very skewed. He's got terrific numbers at the Saddle Dome. Last night certainly helps bump up his road numbers a little bit. I think what we heard Ryan Huska say is I'm not averse to giving a guy 2 out of 3 starts if he proves that he's going to be our guy. And I saw that. Yes, Dustin Wolf right now is not only their best option today, he's the best option for the future. But I do think this is a bit of a challenge from the coach. Like, okay, guys, we don't have to rotate back and forth all season. Show me that you deserve more starts. And I think people in this city are really excited about Dustin Wolf's ability to do that, about the way he's looked so far this season, and how that might leave him poised for more starts down the stretch. But if Dan Vladar suddenly gets hot, we could see a lot of him as well.
Lastly, some sad news to pass along. Longtime Calgary Flames coach and executive Al MacNeil has died at the age of 89. Wes, this is someone that spent a lot of years in Calgary with the Flames. What can you say about his time and his impact on the organization?
I thought Al McInnes put it brilliantly on social media, and I maybe not going to get the direct quote right, but he essentially called Al MacNeil the most loyal Calgary Flame ever. And I thought that was just perfect. Al MacNeil arrived from Atlanta as the first head coach of the Calgary Flames, and you'd spot him around the rink, up until a month or so ago. He died Sunday at age 89. I want to share 2 kind of neat Al MacNeil stories. The first one, just sort of big picture. Al MacNeil would do handwritten scouting reports after every game. He'd do an assessment of every single player, and he would deliver those in an envelope to the Saddle Dome. The general manager got one, the head coach got the other. And I remember hearing about this for the first time probably 7 or 8 years ago and thinking, oh man, that's so cool that he's still doing that as he approaches his 80s or into his 80s. And he kept that up. Craig Conroy told me that he probably got that last scouting report from him about a month and a half ago. And so just a guy who was always looking for a way to help the Flames. Another kind of neat story is that when they traded for Lanny McDonald, he'd sort of just rub black tape on the end of his stick or on his stick blade, but he wouldn't actually tape it. And Al MacNeil called him aside and said, Lanny, you're giving the goalie the opportunity to see the puck. You got to start taping your stick. And Lanny McDonald scored a franchise record 66 goals that next season and never went without tape on his stick blade again. And so just a couple neat anecdotes that I think sum up the life and legacy of Al Chopper MacNeil, a man who had a profound impact on the Flames franchise.
Yeah, really incredible. What a career, what a life for Al MacNeil. As always, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. For Wes Gilbertson and Danny Austin, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.